So when you drive past a massive shopping mall, it's really easy to just see this colossal concrete box filled with stores. You might think the business model is super simple. You build a huge empty building, you fill it up with shops, and then you just sit back and watch the rent checks roll in every single month. But as we're going to explore in this explainer today, that assumption couldn't be further from the truth. Malls are absolutely not just static buildings. They are incredibly fragile, tightly interconnected financial ecosystems where every single tenant's fortune is quietly tied to every other tenant's fortune. It's honestly one of the strangest stories in all of real estate. And the way these massive structures actually make and lose money, well, it's going to completely change how you look at your local shopping center.
Right off the bat, when you acquire a mall, you're not just buying land and steel. As the old real estate adage goes, you're actually buying a bet on a neighborhood. And the upfront costs, they are staggering. From pouring concrete to running literal miles of ductwork to dealing with local zoning laws, building a mall can easily cost more than a small hospital. This is exactly why most people who own malls today don't own them directly. Instead, they use a structure called a real estate investment trust, or a REIT. A REIT basically lets everyday investors buy shares in a massive portfolio of malls on the stock market. It's a brilliant way to spread that enormous risk across dozens or even hundreds of shopping centers. That way, investors don't have to absorb the catastrophic financial hit of, say, a leaking roof or a collapsed anchor tenant in just one single town.
Okay, let's really dive into this because the math behind mall real estate totally shatters every logical assumption you might have. You'd logically think that the biggest, most prominent store in the building pays the absolute most rent, right? Wrong. The massive department store anchors at the far ends of the mall might pay a shockingly low $5 per square foot in base rent. Meanwhile, the tiny inline specialty clothing shops right next door, they're paying anywhere from $40 to $60 per square foot. Seriously, the store with the absolute biggest sign and the most floor space is paying roughly 1/10 of what the little shop is paying.
So why on earth would a mall owner ever accept that math? Well, it's because the mall isn't actually selling physical space to the anchor store. The mall is renting foot traffic from them. The giant department store brings in the crowds, and those customers, they walk past dozens of smaller stores on their way in and out. So the mall owner is basically paying for that foot traffic with a massive rent discount. And every other smaller store in the building is effectively subsidizing that discount, simply because they have to pay full price just to sit near that flow of traffic. And this entire concept of traffic flow was perfected decades ago. The pioneer of the modern American mall, a developer named Alfred Taubman, didn't just construct buildings. The guy literally studied human movement. He deliberately spaced those big anchor stores 3 blocks apart. He intentionally put the escalators at the far ends of the hallways instead of right in the middle. Why? Because forced movement equals exposure. Every single architectural choice was designed to force shoppers to walk the full length of a corridor, passing as many smaller storefronts as humanly possible before they finally reach what they actually came for. And that visual exposure is exactly what those small tenants are paying top dollar for. Now, when this whole system is working, it's an absolute money-printing machine, and it's fueled by 4 distinct layers of income. First up, you have the base rent we just talked about. Second is percentage rent. This is where the mall actually takes a cut of a store's sales once they cross a certain breakpoint. This means the mall's income automatically scales up if a tenant does really well. Third is CAM, or common area maintenance, which is where tenants pay their share for the cleaning, the lighting, the security. And fourth is non-store revenue, pulling in cash from things like parking fees, digital ads, and seasonal pop-ups. It's literally revenue flowing in from 4 different directions all at once. But there's a really counterintuitive secret hiding right there in that 4th layer of income. Picture a tiny sunglasses kiosk sitting in the middle of a busy walkway. It takes up, barely 100 square feet of physical space? Yet, because it sits directly in the path of every single shopper passing through, it can actually be priced at a far higher rate per square foot than a massive, full-size store along the wall. In this business, position is worth infinitely more than space. But here is exactly where the entire system becomes incredibly fragile. Hidden in almost every single mall lease is something called a co-tenancy clause. Think of this as a hidden trapdoor. The contract legally states that if a major anchor store closes, the smaller stores around it are allowed to pay reduced rent or sometimes even walk away from their leases entirely, no penalty. So a mall can look perfectly full on the day you buy it, but the moment one big piece falls out, the entire financial structure beneath it shifts instantly, without the mall owner even lifting a finger. And that triggers a terrifying chain reaction known in the industry as the CAM death spiral. Let's walk through how this happens. Step 1, an anchor store leaves. Step 2, the fixed utility and upkeep costs to light and heat that million-square-foot building, those stay exactly the same. Step 3, because that massive space is now empty, the common area maintenance pool shrinks. Step 4, this means the remaining loyal stores suddenly have to pay a much higher share of the CAM fees just to keep the hallway lights on. And finally, Step 5, that intense financial pressure forces even more of those marginal tenants to close their doors. Boom, death spiral. Which leads us to a massive trap that catches a lot of casual investors completely off guard. Occupancy does not equal income. A mall can look totally healthy from the outside, boasting 90% occupancy. But if half of that space is taken up by anchors paying practically nothing, and the other half is filled with stores on heavily discounted short-term leases just to prevent the building from looking abandoned, well, the actual cash flow can be bleeding red. So just remember, a full mall is not necessarily a profitable mall.
To really grasp the sheer scale of this vulnerability, consider this one terrifying number: 80%. You see, for most of the 20th century, department stores were the guaranteed foot traffic that made this whole game work. But by the 2010s, they started collapsing. When Sears filed for bankruptcy in October 2018, roughly 80% of their branded stores were located inside regional malls. Now remember those co-tenancy clauses we talked about? Yeah, a single Sears closing didn't just mean one lost rent check. It legally triggered a sudden wave of rent reductions for dozens of other stores in the exact same building, all at once.
So you might be thinking, okay, why not just quickly replace the anchor store with something else? Well, because you really can't. These massive 100,000 square foot boxes were built with highly specific layouts and loading docks. They do not easily convert to anything else. In fact, one mall owner spent $100 million in 3 full years just to subdivide one single old department store into 4 smaller stores. Now multiply that time and massive expense across dozens of empty anchor boxes simultaneously across the country, and you start to see why an anchor closing is absolutely devastating. Let's actually watch this exact financial trap spring shut in the real world. Take Rolling Acres Mall in Akron, Ohio. It opened up in 1975 with Sears as its first anchor. By the mid-90s, it hit an incredible peak of 98% occupancy with over 140 stores. It was booming. But as competing malls opened and anchors like Target and Dillard's slowly left, that death spiral began. Occupancy absolutely crashed. By 2008, the interior was officially closed. Vandals and scrappers totally tore the place apart, ruining the infrastructure. And by 2019, the entire site was demolished, entirely cleared out and replaced by an Amazon warehouse. And the sheer financial wipeout of Rolling Acres is encapsulated in a staggeringly low number: $2.75 million. That is all this massive property sold for in the early 2000s, just a tiny fraction of its previous valuation of over $33 million. By the time the city of Akron finally had to seize the property for over $1 million in unpaid property taxes, it was worth essentially nothing. This wasn't some sudden dramatic explosion. It was a slow, agonizing sequence of triggered financial contracts cascading just like dominoes. So why did this happen to Rolling Acres and so many others just like it? It's because their core product wasn't really the physical stores inside. Their core product was convenience. Think about it. If you wanted to compare 5 brands of shoes in one trip, the mall was quite literally the only place in town you could do that. That was their monopoly. But online shopping completely destroyed that reason for existing. Suddenly, shoppers could compare hundreds of options right from their couch without dealing with parking lots or checkout lines. The weak malls, stuck in the middle, the ones that were not quite luxury but not quite discount either, they were hit the absolute hardest. So how do you escape the trap? Well, the mall owners who actually kept their properties alive realized they had to make a massive pivot. If they couldn't sell products anymore, they had to sell reasons to physically leave the house. They began filling those huge empty anchor boxes with experiences that a computer screen genuinely cannot replicate. We're talking sit-down restaurants, giant gyms, urgent care medical clinics, co-working spaces, and even converting entire wings into apartments and hotels. They took these highly fragile retail bets and turned them into mixed-use properties with multiple stable income streams. Which brings us to a really fascinating crossroads. Next time you walk through those automatic doors and pass by a fitness studio where a giant department store used to be, or maybe you notice a sudden cluster of empty storefronts, you'll know exactly what's happening just beneath the surface. You'll see the forced movement, the subsidized foot traffic, and those invisible co-tenancy contracts trying to hold it all together. So take a look around your own neighborhood. As the entire industry races to pivot from selling products to selling experiences, ask yourself, is your local shopping center successfully navigating this complex financial trap, or is it destined to become the next Amazon warehouse?